7 ancient horsetail banners flap heavily under a grey Adrianople sky as the Ottoman Empire begins its final march toward the Christian West. This is not a raid. This is not a border war. 170,000 soldiers advance on Vienna, the largest army ever assembled against a single European city. The defenders inside the walls number barely 15,000 men. No relief force has ever crossed the trackless Wienerwald in battle order. If Vienna falls, the road to the Rhine lies open. Decades of ruinous warfare leave the European continent exhausted and fragmented, while the southern borders face a resurgent expansionist threat. A massive stone fortification, the fortress of Kamieniec-Podolski, casts long shadows across the Polish frontier after falling to this growing imperial power. The Grand Vizier wields a structural force of 170,000 men, an army anchored by elite Janissaries, armored Sipahi cavalry, and ruthless Crimean Tatar raiders. This immense military machine possesses overwhelming numbers that no single European state can match. This colossal asymmetry forces the fractured Christian kingdoms into a desperate diplomatic scramble for survival. A regional rebellion in Upper Hungary triggers a formal declaration of war that threatens to dismantle Central Europe completely. A heavy iron quill scratches across parchment beneath a papal seal, binding ancient rivals to a mutual defense pact. Sobieski signs the Treaty of Warsaw, committing his crown to war. He believes he is fighting a holy crusade to defend Christendom from total conquest. He assumes the Imperial Alliance will act with equal speed and absolute unity. That signed parchment sets an irreversible countdown in motion across the borders. The vanguard of the campaign moves with terrifying speed, bypassing border fortresses to strike deep into the Habsburg heartland. Clouds of choking dust rise as 40,000 Crimean Tatar horsemen burn the Austrian countryside and spread absolute panic. Kara Mustafa Pasha gives the ruthless command to push the main army directly toward the capital gates. The pockmarked administrator is driven by boundless personal ambition to seize the legendary riches of the city intact. He refuses to halt for a methodical siege of frontier outposts. Kara Mustafa expects a rapid capitulation from a panicked and abandoned imperial capital. Deep underground galleries beneath the stone ravelins are packed with barrels of black powder as Ottoman miners work to collapse the walls. The Grand Vizier assumes the Christian relief force will never cross the trackless, rugged Wienerwald forest, leaving his northern flank undefended. He is calculating for a conventional land approach along the Danube riverbank, the only route any competent commander would take. No army in European history has ever moved heavy cavalry through mountainous forest in battle formation. This assumption is not arrogance. It is the conclusion of every military textbook he has ever studied. He turns his attention to the walls in front of him. The northern flank requires no further thought. The Allied commanders choose a path of extreme operational risk to break the suffocating siege below. Heavy bronze cannons sink deep into the mud of stormy forest paths as the relief force enters the dense wilderness. Charles of Lorraine decides to bypass the flat, heavily defended riverbanks entirely to scale the mountainous peaks. This desperate maneuver forces thousands of soldiers to drag massive baggage trains through rocky, trackless ravines in foul weather. This brutal march through the forest secures the critical high ground. The jagged crest of the ridge reveals a vast sea of white tents and smoking trenches choking the valley floor. The steep terraced vineyards of Nussdorf are carved into the rugged slopes of the Kahlenberg mountain, forming a massive obstacle. This punishing landscape leaves the Allied troops exposed and isolated before they can even assemble their lines. The structural advantage of the Grand Vizier is carved directly into the hills, as defensive positions block the narrow descents. The rugged terrain turns the neat tactical plan into a localized, desperate nightmare. The Allied deployment splits under the pressure of the terrain, separating the commanders at the moment of contact. Polished steel breastplates catch the scorching late summer sun as Austro-German infantry units form dense defensive blocks near the riverbank. While the left wing prepares to face fierce, spoiling attacks, the vital right flank remains completely empty. Thousands of horsemen are still missing from the line as the battle erupts on the opposite side of the mountain. The entire relief operation fragments into uncoordinated, isolated actions. The synchronized Allied offensive fails completely within the first hours of the morning engagement. A deep, muddy, overgrown stream bed at the foot of the hills traps the Polish cavalry as horses thrash in confusion. This severe delay leaves the Allied center dangerously exposed to a massive counterattack from consolidating Imperial forces. The original plan of a unified, sweeping flank attack is rendered entirely unviable by the treacherous terrain. The commanders face total defeat before their elite strike force can even deploy. A critical turning point arrives as King Sobieski chooses to gamble the entire campaign on a single, immediate blow. The thunderous descent of 18,000 Allied horsemen roars down the Kahlenberg heights through choking smoke and scattered musket fire. At the front, the winged Hussars carry 5-meter lances, each horseman armored in polished steel plates with tall wooden frames and eagle feathers rising from their backs. The hillside itself seems to shake as the largest cavalry charge in European history commits to the steep, uneven slopes. No commander has ever attempted a descent of this scale on terrain this treacherous. If this charge fails, Vienna falls tonight. The horsemen vanish into the smoke. The valley below awaits in silence. Methodical infantry coordination slowly unlocks the outer defensive lines along the lower terrace slopes. Acrid clouds of grey smoke rise from burning wine press huts and stone walls as Austrian and Saxon foot soldiers advance yard by yard. This disciplined pressure gradually pushes the Imperial right wing back toward the Danube arm, clearing a path for the heavy cavalry. The mechanism of the Allied victory begins to reveal itself through systematic combined arms coordination. This steady clearance uncovers the vulnerable heart of the enemy lines. The Grand Vizier expects to exploit the fragmented Allied line with a devastating central counteroffensive. A sudden surge of armored Sipahi cavalry sweeps through a wide gap in the center, threatening to isolate the advancing Germans. This unexpected maneuver spreads immediate panic as the Allied line begins to bend backward under intense pressure. The entire relief effort threatens to collapse into an uncoordinated rout before the main strike force can fully form. A single breakthrough will dismantle the coalition. A series of cautious piecemeal probe charges tests the treacherous terrain before the final deployment. A single steel saber is raised high above the front line as the king rides directly into the lower valleys to coordinate the assault. Sobieski recognizes the growing confusion within the enemy camp, where the fatal assumption has left the flank entirely open. He refuses to delay the attack until morning, choosing instead to defy the conventional rules of engagement. That decisive presence stabilizes the faltering center. A massive, unbroken semicircle of 18,000 horsemen unleashes a cataclysmic shock across the open plain. Steel-plated armor and large wooden frames holding eagle feathers loudly through the wind as the winged Hussars' cavalry charge smashes the enemy lines. The fatal assumption of an unassailable northern flank is instantly shattered by the sheer momentum of the armored collision. The disorganized Imperial ranks are trampled and scattered into deep confusion within mere minutes. That thunderous impact breaks the defensive spine permanently. The sudden collapse of the Grand Army transforms the sprawling encampment into a scene of unparalleled slaughter and plunder. Thousands of fine silk carpets and gold coins are trodden into blood-soaked soil beneath the abandoned white tents. Elite Janissaries are systematically cut to pieces inside their own siege trenches, caught between the cavalry and a desperate garrison sally. The fields surrounding the city are instantly littered with tens of thousands of decaying bodies. A dark, terrible silence falls over the valley. The immediate demographic toll reveals a regional devastation that extends far beyond the military casualties. A long, agonizing column of 57,000 civilian captives is marched southward into the slave markets, their homes systematically razed. The complete collapse of the border defenses leaves thousands of families broken and displaced in the wake of the retreat. This massive human tragedy underscores the brutal cost of the expansionist campaign across the Austrian borderlands. The catastrophic retreat permanently drains the demographic strength of the region. The disgraced Grand Vizier expects to shift the blame onto subordinate commanders to preserve his standing. A severed head preserved in silk is carried back to the imperial palace in Istanbul, marking the ultimate price of his failure. The political shockwaves of the Battle of Vienna 1683 reverberate instantly across the Islamic world, triggering executions and court rebellions. This administrative purge seals the total breakdown of the high command structure. That internal collapse ensures the empire will never launch another offensive into Central Europe. Did the sudden Christian victory at Vienna mark the genuine beginning of a unified European identity, or was it merely a temporary marriage of convenience between bitter imperial rivals? A solitary, rusted iron breastplate lies half buried in the overgrown soil of the Kahlenberg Ridge, a silent witness to a coalition that fractured almost immediately after the triumph. Emperor Leopold returns to a liberated city only to clash bitterly with his protectors over protocol and prestige. The fragile alliance dissolves into diplomatic coldness before the battlefield even clears. Would the long-term decline of the imperial frontier have occurred naturally through internal fiscal crises, or was this specific military defeat the indispensable catalyst for a new era? A massive leather-bound treaty is stamped with the wax seals of 4 separate sovereign powers, organizing a permanent counter-offensive. This strategic realignment creates a coordinated, multi-front crusade designed to systematically dismantle centuries of regional hegemony. The victory provides an immediate momentum that forces the frontiers back across the Balkans. That diplomatic shift permanently alters the balance of power. The historic signing of the Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699 establishes an absolute Habsburg dominance over Central Europe. Bags of a strange, dark bean are roasted over open fires, introducing a vibrant coffee culture to the streets of Vienna. The legacy of the Battle of Vienna 1683 permanently cements the end of offensive expansion into the west. Following this triumph, King Jan Sobieski pursues the retreating forces directly into Hungary at the Battle of Parkani. The newly formed Holy League launches a massive multi-front campaign to systematically dismantle regional hegemony. The road from the Kahlenberg Heights runs directly to the Battle of Parkani, where Sobieski will pursue the shattered Ottoman army deep into Hungary before winter closes the passes. Subscribe to stay with this series, as the next engagement is already in production. If you are watching on a television screen, the QR code will take you directly to the subscribe button on your phone.